everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. Normally I do a regular camera video on Thursdays, but things are interfering with that, so this episode I was going to talk about alchemy, with an emphasis on internal alchemy. So the big emphasis that I want to have when people think of alchemy, because a lot of times they think of beakers and potions and especially converting base metals to gold. But there's a notion with regard to alchemy that I think could be summed up in one word, and that's transformation. Alchemy is about transformation, which it's really, you can see how it's a forerunner of chemistry in that regard, because, chemistry is sort of the study of the structure and changes that matter undergoes. Chemistry fixates on transformation, just as alchemy does. The difference is that chemistry is founded in the scientific method, and it's more about the practical applications of converting one state of matter to another. And by state, I don't just mean solid, liquid, gas. I mean like the conversion of multiple elements into more complex compounds. And I can think of no greater example of this than plastics, just because they're so far removed from their initial material. If you convert something that is one kind of metal to something else, like, copper to bronze. Is it copper and tin that's bronze? Or brass? I always mix those up. Copper and... You get the idea. You can still see it just a natural... that it's an alloy of those two materials. And conversely, plating one kind of metal with another using electrolysis, you still can see fundamentally what you're dealing with. But with plastics, it's so far removed from its base materials that it's just pretty stunning. Well, with regard to alchemy, a lot of the intention in transformation is less a substantial kind of transformation and more of an internal or spiritual transformation. And we see this, sorry for the heavy breathing, guys, my allergies are killing me. But we particularly see this in the East in terms of saving vital essence, and we see this in the West as the Philosopher's Stone. And the Philosopher's Stone, a lot like the Holy Grail, is a lot more metaphorical than literal. It's so easy to snub our noses at people in the past as being ignorant because of things like this, these stories. But when you realize that there's a more esoteric interpretation of these stories, that it's not literal, it totally changes the game. It would be like, imagine if 500 years from now, people looked at modernity and criticized and ridiculed people for Santa Claus. People were so dumb back then that adults thought that a magic old man on the North Pole brought them gifts. Well, obviously we don't. We understand that that's not actually what's happening. Well, I won't deny that a lot of medieval alchemists did believe that they could turn base metals like tin and iron into gold. And, even now, what's funny about that is we've reached a point where we can alter things atomically. So, chemistry, the forerunner of alchemy, or did I get that backwards? The descendant of alchemy, we've now reached a point where it is conceivable that we could turn base metals into gold. Matter can't be made or broken, only moved or changed, but it can be changed pretty dang substantially if you can alter it atomically. But even though a lot of people did have those particular goals in mind, it wasn't based on, pure ignorance. It was based on the understanding that the world around them is just a never-ending series of changes. Solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. And you see this a lot in external alchemy, this notion of transformation. But modern alchemy is much more fixated on the more esoteric and intrinsic aspects of alchemy, which is to say the internal aspects. And that is, it's important when we look at that to consider what changes a person, because a person's life is riddled with transformation. But how are these transformations triggered? What causes a person to change? Obviously, hormones cause human change. Now we're starting to notice that microbiomes, bacteria, cause human change. I talk about that in a previous episode. But what about all the other things that you don't relate to infant version of yourself or early childhood version of yourself with? What triggered those changes? And most of those are intellectual and arguably spiritual changes. These are changes that have happened to you, that have made you who you are, based on exposure to different forms of information and different periods of your life. And the order in which that exposure happens can be enormous. If someone is not psychologically ready for information in one order and they receive it in that order, it can completely skew their view of things. Someone who learns algebra before calculus might be adept at math. Somebody who does that in the reverse order may despise math because calculus confused them, and then algebra as such was less interesting because they have that broken line of interest. Well, similarly, internal alchemy seeks to influence the order in which we receive information and how we process that information in a way that helps us grow intellectually and spiritually. That, I think, more than anything would sum up what makes it internal. Now, of course, the Eastern tradition, which also is riddled with symbols that people sadly interpret as literal. Those silly Chinese, they think that there's worms in you. These worms are metaphorical for intellectual and spiritual decay. But the focus in that instance, because there's less, it is more rooted in Taoism, and Taoism is a very practical spirituality. It's not really focused on an afterlife at all. In fact, its chiefest goal is immortality of the body. But and that's a bit of an exaggeration. That's what people write down is its chief goal. But if you look at a lot of the more important tenets of Chinese internal alchemy, it's about balancing the various internal forces in order to achieve a state of harmony. Well, it parallels perfectly with the European or Western view of alchemy, because in that instance, it's about these four humors. Well, again, when we look at it more as something that's allegorical, these four humors actually make very good sense, because human health and happiness are tied directly to balancing out certain compartmentalizations that we have in our life. In fact, it's one of the reasons why Zoom is exhausting so many people, because these compartmentalizations are becoming sort of unified, and it's making people uncomfortable. You're using the same software and the same program and the same settings in the same locations of your home to talk to your kids' teachers and your boss and your coworkers and your grandparents, and maybe some peer in a completely different field and your doctor, and you're using them for all the same things, and it's creating a psychological imbalance. People are getting Zoom fatigue because these things are not compartmentalized. You're using it's almost like bad dreams, where people are like, well, I was at school, but my grandma was the teacher, and I was dressed for prom, and just all those peculiar nightmares people have. Those are about breakdowns of those boundaries, of those compartmentalizations. Well, alchemy is all about that. It's about certain, and they use a lot of different symbols for it, including the elements, but these compartmentalizations of both a person's life as well as their personality. And that's a lot of the focus on the four humors. Those are aspects of a person's personality. Everybody is, joyful and angry and melancholy and prone to overthinking. Everybody has those facets. It's a question of does one of those in particular dominate your life? And if so, how can we get it not to dominate your life? How can we get all those others balanced out? That's a huge aspect of it. If something like this was written today and they were very heavy-handed about how this is a metaphor, this is not something to look at, it would be just as mainstream and popular, I think, as a means of self-improvement as the Briggs Myers personality, as a number of self-help steps, how to win friends and influence people type stuff. It would be very mainstream. It's just because it's older, people have a tendency to assume that it was taken at face value and has no applications in modernity. So I highly encourage people to study a lot of these ancient alchemy texts, and while you're doing so, just constantly keep in mind, be very mindful that there's every chance in the world, especially if it's something very obscure, if they start talking about red dragons or yellow mountains or anything of that sort, vermilion added to the essence of an animal of some sort, it's metaphorical. And researching what those metaphors mean can be in some ways just as pivotal to your growth and your well-being as the practice of those things. Because you're taking in information and you're sorting it properly and you're going through those steps. It can be really beneficial in that sense. I know this is a generic comparison, but it's kind of like, in real life, by the way, learning to paint a fence isn't going to make you good at karate, but in, the Karate Kid, that's sort of how it works. Well, very similarly, dealing with these metaphors and understanding what they mean can actually help you put what they represent in practice. So, yeah, I think that covers it for alchemy. Like, share, subscribe, keep asking questions. Bye.